Hello and welcome back to Big Head on Goswick Lane. I'm Shane Goswick. This is Genty Patel.
Good morning.
And our guest today, we'll let him introduce himself. Cameron, tell us your name and your company and what you do.
My name is Cameron Norris. I own Texas Best Appraisal. We are based out of Longview, and we are residential appraisers. I've got a staff appraiser and a trainee and an office manager, and those three have been on board with me for about 3 years now.
Awesome.
And we do just residential appraisal, no commercial, but just residential land.
You said 10 years? You've been in about 10 years?
I've been licensed, certified is a difference, since December 2014, so about almost 10.
Okay,
But
awesome.
I trained for 3 years before. I mean, I was writing reports in the second year of training.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
you know, and I trained for 3, so that's what?
11 to 12 years.
Yes, about 12. So I've been, fully writing reports for about 11 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cameron, I'll ask the audience here first. Have you ever, if you're an investor and you're doing a new build or you're doing a rehab and you're looking for a certain final value, final appraisal, ARV, whatever you want to call it, and you get it back and you're like, holy moly, this is not enough. This is not enough. The bank
never happens.
Okay.
No.
Ever.
So Cameron is our antagonist today. We're going to try to turn him from an enemy into a friend, because we're going to pull out information that you guys as real estate agents and investors need to know so that you can have a possibility of getting the appraisals that you need. Does that make sense, Genty?
Makes sense to me.
All right. Can you explain your process of an appraisal? We want a better understanding of what you do so that we can, on the front side of this, let's have a little empathy, because I want to understand the man sitting in that seat right there. I want to understand Cameron and what he does as an appraiser so that I can work with him, any appraiser, instead of feeling like I'm working against him, which a lot of times is how it feels. Tell me about what you do, your process, how you do it from the time that the bank sends out the quote request on a property. Walk me through that process.
Yeah, I get what you mean about working against me. I know it can feel like that a lot of the time. I've had agents tell me, we're nervous about the appraisal. We're nervous about the appraisal, which is understandable. Like I told you earlier, I'm going through it. We're about to build a house.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to cost X amount to build, but me doing what I do, I know what it's most likely going to appraise for. So I get it. I'm nervous about my appraisal that's coming up.
Yeah.
But so how it works is, over the past 9 years, I have a list of clients. I started out with a couple, and now I've got 120 plus.
Okay.
Those are appraisal management companies, local banks, Austin Bank, TBT, ECU. A lot of them are appraisal management companies, which a lot of appraisers don't work for, but that's 75% of my business.
Okay.
And I don't mind that type of stuff.
Yeah.
They have more stipulations. But anyways, they'll either send out an appraisal directly to us, or they will send out what we call a bid. Pretty self-explanatory. Hey, Cameron, what does your office need? What is your quote in fee in your turn time? Right now, base fees $450, down a little bit from when COVID was. Simple supply and demand.
Supply and demand. Yeah.
What was it during COVID? Just
$550 base.
You guys
we were getting.
You guys are so busy. You had to raise your rates.
Yeah, we didn't have to, but when
you should.
We started seeing, lenders sending stuff for $550, $600. Well, I'm not gonna be like, oh no, I only do it for $450.
Yeah, guys, save $100.
Yeah, y'all save y'all some money. No, that's not how we work.
Yeah.
This is America. We're trying to make all the money we can.
We're capitalists, right?
So then we'll also, $450, and we can get it back. If it's Monday, usually we can get it back by Friday. Now that's 4 days versus 4 weeks during the boom. Unprecedented times.
What is a typical turnaround on an appraisal? Like
About 2 weeks is like I think the national average. Last I looked.
Okay.
And that was standard. When it picks back up, when the market starts picking back up, and I mean right now it's not dead, but it's definitely not during the boom as we know. But 2 weeks is pretty typical. We get it on a Monday, we'll have it back to you in 2 Thursdays or 2 Fridays or 2 weeks, somewhere in there. But right now, we're doing about 12 a week. I do about 7. My staff appraiser does about 5. If they're a little simpler, I'll throw him 6, whatever he can handle. He can handle 8. But I've got to, do a little bit more work than him because I've got the overhead to pay for the business. So, but yeah, so we'll send that back, and then they will say, hey, you got the bid, or some of these we just accept right away. And what I do there is I start prepping the order. Maybe not like right then, but I'll prep the order. I'll make the work file, the CAD, MLS if there is one, zoning, all the stuff all the factually based info. And then, my office manager, I taught her how to do it. I say I do it, we do it.
I'm gonna pause you right there. The CAD, does the CAD value come into play at any point?
I don't even look at that.
Okay,
no,
that's good.
Because
good information.
They do mass appraisal, which is a whole. I mean, I'm not even versed in mass appraisal. They do, however, which I didn't know. A guy called me the other day from the CAD, was asking some questions. They actually take what they deem comparable from the CAD, and that's how they derive, if it's, they have their square footage adjustment, stuff like that, but they're doing that type of stuff, but it's on a mass scale, so they can't, if there's no MLS, they don't know if that property's got granite or laminate tops, or if it's got high-end vinyl plank versus laminate, the cheap laminate that comes in sheets that you see in a lot of distressed homes, just lower income homes.
If you're not familiar with CAD, the acronym CAD, that is County Appraisal District, and that is what your real estate taxes are based on every year.
Yeah, so, make the work file, prep the software for the report, and then call or text the agent or the owner, hey, we've got this appraisal. This is what we're going to be doing. Takes about, that home I did the other day took 25 minutes.
If they're vacant and there's nobody there, vacant, 10 minutes.
That woman, she kind of talked my ear off, but that's fine. We were talking about something we both had interest in. And anyways, you can, not more than an hour usually, and that's for a 5,000, 6,000 square foot house. I've been doing this a decade. I can measure with my eyes closed. Do the inspection, pictures, notes, sketch, go back, upload it to the file we've already created, and then just start our research. That begins with macro research. So let's say I've got a home in Wildwood in Pine Tree. Y'all are familiar. That is a defined market to me.
That's a macro, right? You're looking at a big picture. It's in a nice neighborhood.
So if someone says neighborhood, I think Longview, or Pine Tree or Longview ISD. It could be, you could say it either way, but that would be, that's like, I don't really know what's bigger than macro. I don't know a word for it. But the macro market of Wildwood would be Wildwood.
Gotcha.
And so that's every single home that we researched in the last year for our report that we have to display certain information. However, if I think I need to find out trends that go back 2 years or even 3 years, if I can't find 3 comparables and I have to go back, we can do that. There's no, everyone always asks, what are your constraints? Like, you can only go back a year. I'm like, no, there's nothing in USPAP, the uniform standards, that say you have to stay within a year. You don't even have to take photos of the house.
Okay.
It's pretty much just along the lines of how to competently create complete an appraisal.
So if you have to go back a couple years, say 3 years, is there multipliers or formulas? Because obviously values change in 3 years, right?
Values definitely change, as we've seen. But even without the boom, you could expect anywhere from 2 to 3% appreciation. If you keep up with your house, you can't just let it sit there for 30 years and it just keeps. There's a point when it stops appreciating. But we run price per square foot data. So let's say I used something 3 years ago in Wildwood, and I've got one this year, like yesterday. I would run multiple CMAs, comparable market analysis reports, and see, what was the average price per square foot here in 2020.
And that's based on sold prices, is that correct?
Yeah, we take listings into account, but they don't get any weight whenever we go to weight our comparables. Okay. So when we, let me touch back on what I was saying. So I'll do the macro research, and then what I'll do for the micro when I go to choose comparables is let's say I've got a 2,000 square foot house. So the macro research could include, those big homes over by the lake that are 5,000-6,000 feet. That's the macro market. The micro market, we're condensing it down to, I usually go 25% down on GLA and 25% up. In the year,
what does that mean? 25% down on GLA.
So if we have a 2,000 square foot house, I'll go 1,500 to 2,500.
Gotcha.
That's comparable sizes. It's pretty standard. Some appraisers go to like 40%.
This is good info. Okay, so if I'm looking at a 2,500 square foot house, let's say I'm looking at this from an investor standpoint because I'm an investor, right? I'm looking at a 2,500 square foot house that I'm going to rehab in a neighborhood that has comps. Yeah, we can look and find comps. So I can look at 3,000 down to 2,000 and try to.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty comfortable. I mean that's unless I absolutely have to on 2,500 square feet, don't really like going under 2,000 because it's a different type house, right? Yeah, and people also, it's a psychological thing. Like when they see 2,000 square feet versus like 1990, they're thinking that 2,000 square foot house is like way bigger than the one that's only 10. It's a psychological thing. And I read that somewhere way back. And
it's like when people set their price and it's like it's $19.99, right? Versus $20.
Yeah, and I have a question about why y'all do that too. If we want to touch on that later, but yeah. So macro research, micro research, we get the comparables, and make our adjustments. Hopefully there's not a lot. The less adjustments, the better the comparables. Really, I mean, you can argue that. The main adjustments are price per square foot, or just square footage difference, and usually amenities, pool, shop. We do not.
What about age?
Age, that's interesting. I get that. That's probably the most asked question.
Good question.
Asked about adjustment. So the way, let's say you've got a 1970s home, was well taken care of, but it's obviously dated. We're talking like pink tile bathrooms,
there's
maybe
still
yellow.
4x4 pink.
Might have a little wallpaper.
Yeah. You just walk in, you're like, someone got groovy in here 50 years ago. You know? So age, and let's say that 1970s house had been totally updated. Well, in my eyes, I wouldn't necessarily say a brand new home because, unless you took out all the studs, let's say you just did everything but the concrete. I mean, then maybe a brand new house. But I might go, up to 2010 on that because so the market, and I can vouch for this, when I was looking for homes, I thought the same way. A typical market participant is going to usually take condition, even if the condition is good and the home's 50 years old, foundation's been checked. I mean, top to bottom, everything's fine. It's got all new everything. Age, usually they can just put that in the back of their mind.
Okay.
I've asked people that, like when they're moving, like I'll just take random market surveys, not of every single house. I'll just kind of gauge who wants to talk about stuff. And a lot of people say, if the house is totally updated and it's 40, 50, 60 years old and, structurally fine, like I don't care that it was built in the 80s versus, 2010. So it's more of a condition item versus like you don't really make like $1,000 a year, Sometimes with new construction, you can find an adjustment you can extract a market adjustment by doing a paired sales analysis. And like we found before, like a quarter, like let's say you've got 2020 or 2023 versus 2020. Well, that's kind of a bad example because
there's a lot of changes there.
Yeah, a lot of changes. Let's say 2020 versus like
2017.
Yeah, 2020 brand new home. versus 2017. Well, if you do a paired sales analysis, sometimes you can find, we found like 0.25% a year adjustment, and the most we found was like 0.5%. So we just, let's say we throw in, 1.5% to that comp that's 3 years older.
Okay.
That comparable comp. So that's how age goes. And sometimes you can find, it's difficult around here, but sometimes you can find, let's say you have a 70s house versus 2000. But it's so hard because the data is it's not concrete across the board,
Right. But you can take that into an account if you can't find a comp. Mm-hmm. And then I guess my second question, and we'll probably cap it here pretty soon because we're getting close to that 20-minute timeline, is what do you do on like the older homes, 1920, 1925, if you can't find a comp, age-wise?
Again, it would go...
And let's say that it is bad, like it's...
Like the condition?
Condition's bad.
Livable bad or have to be remodeled bad?
Has to be remodeled
like
bad.
Some structural repairs, walls need to be torn down and redone. Okay.
Correct.
So a lot of the times that's going to be an ARV, an as repaired. And, I mean, it depends on you didn't say torn down. You just said remodeled, right?
Remodeled.
Correct.
Those are tricky, and I charge more for them because they're tricky. They take more. They're not that bad in Marshall. A lot. I did one in 1875 the other day. Actually,
Holy moly!
This house had the first indoor bathroom in Marshall.
Oh my gosh,
that's pretty cool.
By some war general. I don't know. I hadn't done one that old in a very long time, and I was like, I've got enough time. I can breathe, and I'm not trying to get out 3 reports a day. So I did it. And it was nice. It had been very well kept. But if you're walking upstairs, I mean, someone on the other end of the house downstairs is going to know it. You know, it was one of those houses. Not my cup of tea. But try and find, if let's say you've got one in Marshall and you can't find one, well, I'm going to go over to Longview. I'm going to probably just draw all of East Texas and try and find older homes.
Okay, so
if I can't find anything, then,
you just keep going until you can find.
And then you would have to do location adjustments. I mean, obviously, price per square foot in Longview, depending on where you're at, is going
different
to be
than
more
Marshall.
than Marshall,
right?
Just almost across the board. So that's what we call location adjustment. You could do it by school district. You could do it by specific areas in Longview. Are you in southern Longview? Are you in central Longview, north Longview? It all just, there's different areas you can run for that. But if not, try and find, as close to that age as you can or as close to condition. Those are investor-driven homes, as you know. Mm-hmm. When I get a house that is foreclosed on or being foreclosed on, it's most likely always in just horrible condition. So age right there isn't the biggest thing, because I know that you or one of your guys or friends are going to come in and you're going to just gut the heck out of that place, and you're going to replace everything. You're going to get an inspection, probably foundation, the roof. So
electrical's probably going to have to be redone.
Electrical,
right?
Plumbing.
A lot of plumbing.
Usually when I see those ARVs, it's the whole house. It's everything down, top to bottom, other than the concrete foundation, if there is one. In crawl space, usually you'll say on there, they'll have an allowance most of the time if they haven't gotten it checked. So.
All right, so. That's going to be the end of this one, but stay tuned, because in the next episode we're gonna hit Cameron with some tough questions.
Oh boy!
We're also going to dive into, are there any hacks to increase my value? And what I mean by hack, we're not talking about anything illegal. We're talking about, are there things that I can add or things that I can do to a renovated property or a new build that increases the value based on what it costs?
Nuggets, right?
We're looking for nuggets.
That's it.
So if you want some nuggets, you gotta jump back in with us next Friday, and we're gonna be giving some big nuggets. There's also something that I would love to do with you in the future, is to sit down and show you a property, or maybe walk through a property with you, one of our properties that we're looking at rehabbing, and get your opinion on what you think the appraisal is going to be, the ARV, why, and go through that actual process of what you do.
Okay.
Being outside of you actually giving us an appraisal, just kind of walking us through and
visually seeing it.
Yeah, visually seeing and getting some information there. Jump back in with us next Friday. We've got a lot of good stuff coming up. We appreciate y'all joining us today on the Big Head on Goswick Lane. Remember, love God, love others, and let your work reflect that. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.